In the far reaches of the galaxy, the Valorians had stood as a beacon of order and logic for millennia. Their society, built on pure reason and intellect, flourished. They believed that emotion was a primitive force, one that had been eradicated from their evolution long ago. To them, emotion was chaos, disorder, the very antithesis of progress. Their cities were silent in their efficiency, their people driven by purpose, free from the turmoil of feeling. The Valorians thrived because they controlled everything. They calculated every move, anticipated every outcome, all within the confines of their flawless logic. Wars had been fought and won not through brute strength, but through cold, strategic precision. They were invincible, so they believed. But then came the void. No one knew where it came from or what it truly wanted, only that it consumed everything in its path. The first signs were subtle. Fleets lost contact, entire cities went dark. There were no warnings, no explosions, just silence. To the Valorians, it was an anomaly, something to be studied, dissected, understood. Yet every attempt to reach out, to analyze the threat, was met with the same result: silence. Then the silence spread. The void wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a force that could be defeated by their advanced technology or their superior intellect. It was something far worse. The void attacked not the body, but the mind. The very essence of what the Valorians held most dear, their logic, was turned against them. One by one, their greatest minds were overtaken, their will sapped, their thoughts consumed by a force that knew no reasoning, no logic. It was an intelligence older than the stars themselves, and it fed on control, order, and logic. The more the Valorians resisted, the faster they fell. Entire fleets turned on each other without warning, as their minds became the voids. Cities shut down in a matter of hours, as the citizens inside became hollow shells, moving only by the will of the void. The Valorians couldn't understand it. They had never encountered a threat that couldn't be reasoned with, predicted, or controlled. The void exploited their very strength, logic, turning it into their greatest weakness. Their brilliant minds, once the pride of the galaxy, were now enslaved by the very force they sought to outwit. Their empire, once vast and invulnerable, fell into ruin in days. In their final moments of consciousness, the Valorians understood one tragic truth. Their reliance on pure logic had made them defenseless against the void. They had built no emotional resilience, no irrational passion, no chaotic determination to fight back. There was no outburst of defiance, no last stand, just a slow, inevitable surrender to the void's control. And so the Valorians, cold, perfect, and calculating, were reduced to nothing more than silent puppets, their minds now property of the void. The galaxy would soon follow, unless something, someone, could stand against it. But who? Certainly not the other logical civilizations who had also risen to power by crushing emotion. No, to defeat the void, something unexpected would be needed, something chaotic, unpredictable, something driven not by reason, but by the raw, untamed power of emotion. The Galactic Federation, a union of the most advanced species in the galaxy, had long thrived under the belief that intellect and logic were the foundations of civilization. The Valorians were not the first to fall to the void, but they were certainly the loudest reminder of the limitations of pure logic. The Federation was shaken, their calculated methods proving useless against this ancient malevolent force. And then there was humanity. The youngest member of the Galactic Federation, humanity was viewed with equal parts curiosity and skepticism. Unlike the other races that had spent centuries shedding their emotional vulnerabilities, humans still held fast to their emotions, intense, volatile, and seemingly uncontrollable. Many in the Federation questioned their place in this intergalactic alliance. How could a race so bound to the chaos of love, rage, hope, and fear contribute to a galaxy where precision was paramount, where rationality reigned supreme? They are erratic. Their emotions cloud their judgment. How can we trust them to maintain control in a time of crisis? Their military capabilities are inferior to most of the galaxy. Their technology is primitive. I fail to see the value in their contributions. We have seen what pure logic has brought us. We cannot deny that the void consumes us because we rely too much on control, perhaps there is something to learn from them. You see our emotions as a weakness. You see our anger, our hope, and our love as something dangerous, something to be controlled. But you forget that those very emotions are what make us fight harder, push further, and endure more than others ever could. You call us erratic, but it was our defiance, our emotions, that saved us when the Void's forces first attacked. They couldn't break us. Why? Because we felt. When our minds were attacked, it was our rage that kept us fighting. When our ships were surrounded, it was our hope that pushed us to survive. You underestimate what emotions can do. You think they make us weak, but they are the very reason we are still here. And if you give us the chance, our emotions will be the weapon that breaks the Void. I believe that human emotions generate a form of energy that the Void can't control. Every time we feel something deeply, it creates a disruption, a frequency the Void can't predict. You're saying our emotions are, what, weapons? In a way, yes. I believe if we can harness this emotional energy, we can fight back against the Void in ways they never expected. No other species has this chaotic spectrum of feelings. We do, and it might be our greatest strength. We've bought ourselves some time, but time won't be enough. No, we need to find a way to take this fight to the Void, and we'll need more than just emotion. We'll need to turn it into something they've never seen before. In the sterile, dimly lit corridors of the human flagship, Dr. Liara Mori, one of Earth's most brilliant neuroscientists, was hard at work. She had spent months studying the effects of emotion on the brain, and had recently begun developing a theory that no one in the Federation had considered. What if emotions weren't just psychological phenomena? What if they could generate energy? Something measurable, something that could affect the Void itself? I'm working on something, but I need more time to test it. We've seen the Void's impact on other species, how it bends logic and thought to its will. But our soldiers, Commander, every time they face the Void, their emotional responses seem to hold it off. But our soldiers, Commander, every time they face the Void, their emotional responses seem to hold it off. I think so. I believe that human emotions generate a form of energy that the Void can't control. Every time we feel something deeply, it creates a disruption, a frequency the Void can't predict. You're saying our emotions are, what? Weapons? In a way, yes. I believe if we can harness this emotional energy, we can fight back against the Void in ways they never expected. No other species has this chaotic spectrum of feelings. We do, and it might be our greatest strength. That's the next step. But if I'm right, if we can amplify emotional energy, we can develop new weapons, shields even, that the Void won't be able to break. Then let's get started. The Void had remained a distant threat for many in the Galactic Federation, a rumor from far-flung systems, easily dismissed by the secure, powerful civilizations that made up the Council. But rumors could not hold back the dark wave that now swept across the stars. The Void had reached the Federation's borders, and it was hungry. For the first time, the full scope of the Void's power became clear. It was not a simple invader seeking territory. It was a force that fed on the minds and wills of entire species. Its tendrils spread across space like an insidious fog, infiltrating the very thoughts of those who relied on logic, twisting them into extensions of its own consciousness. The logical, calculated minds of the galaxy's most advanced species became the Void's greatest tools of destruction. They're closing in. If they break through the next sector, Earth is exposed. I'm working on something, but I need more time to test it. We've seen the Void's impact on other species, how it bends logic and thought to its will. But our soldiers, Commander, every time they face the Void, their emotional responses seem to hold it off. We've seen it in battle reports. Our people don't fall as easily. That's why we're still standing. The question is, how long can we hold out? Not long if we keep fighting like we're just another species. We need to embrace what makes us different, our emotions. That's what they can't break. It's what makes us unpredictable. Far from Earth, on the front lines of the Federation's last defenses, human fleets prepared for what would be their most important mission to date: direct contact with the Void's forces. Reports of entire alien fleets falling without a fight had reached the human commanders, but they had no choice but to engage. Listen up. I know what you're thinking. I know you've heard what's happening out there. Entire fleets, entire planets gone. Not a single shot fired, just silence. But we're not them. We're not built like them. I know you're scared, and that's good. You should be scared. Fear reminds you you're alive. And as long as you're alive, you can fight. And as long as you fight, you can win. The void? It might come for our minds, but it doesn't understand what drives us. It doesn't understand why we keep fighting, why we won't break. We don't fight because it's logical. We fight because we've got something worth protecting. We've got families, we've got homes, we've got each other, and that's why we're going to win. The battle that followed was unlike any the galaxy had seen before. The void's forces appeared like shadows on the edges of space, dark and endless, moving with a silent precision that sent shivers through the Federation's fleets. Alien ships, designed for cold, calculated warfare, froze in place as the void's influence began to spread. But the human ships, they moved. They fired. They fought. All units, stay focused, stay together. This is where we stand. Remember who you're fighting for. Don't give them an inch. The battle ended in a victory that no one expected. The void's forces, though not destroyed, had been pushed back. Humanity, with its chaotic emotional nature, had proven that they could resist where others had fallen. We've bought ourselves some time, he said quietly. But time won't be enough. No. We need to find a way to take this fight to the void, and we'll need more than just emotion. We'll need to turn it into something they've never seen before. Humanity had achieved what no other species in the galaxy had thought possible. They had survived the void's mental onslaught, but survival wasn't enough. Commander Alexei Novikova and Dr. Liara Mori knew that the next step had to be more than just defense. They needed to turn the chaotic force of human emotion into something they could control, something they could weaponize. As the Federation reeled from its losses and entire species were enslaved by the void, humanity worked tirelessly to find the key to their continued resistance. Their emotions, once considered their greatest weakness, were becoming their most powerful asset. But raw emotion was unpredictable, and that unpredictability could just as easily destroy them as save them. I think I've found it. Emotions create energy, raw, disruptive energy. In battle, our soldiers are generating these emotional spikes, and it's throwing off the void's control. I can measure it, I can see it. It's not just theory anymore, it's real. If we amplify it, harness it, we can turn that energy into something more. Emotional frequencies, each one is different. Rage, love, fear, hope, they all produce unique signatures. If we can focus those frequencies, we can weaponize them. Shields, energy blasts, maybe even something to disrupt the void's telepathic network. How soon? Give me a week, I can have the first prototype ready for testing. You've got it. We'll test it in the field. The human fleet had regrouped near the edge of Federation space, preparing for another skirmish with the void's forces. This time, they were armed with something new, emotional amplifiers. These prototype devices, designed by Dr. Mori, were meant to channel the raw emotional energy of human soldiers and turn it into a focused defensive shield, one that could protect the fleet from the void's mental domination. Are we ready? As ready as we'll ever be. Remember, it's not about controlling the emotions. It's about letting them flow. The amplifier will do the rest. Once the soldiers engage, it should amplify their emotional energy and create a defensive field. It's all or nothing. The void's ships moved in closer, their shadowy forms twisting unnaturally through space. The pressure began to mount. The same psychic force that had overtaken countless alien fleets now pressed in on the human ships. Alexei could feel it, the pull at the edges of his mind, the cold, calculating presence of the void trying to slip inside. A wave of energy pulsed through the ship, radiating outward in a brilliant golden light. The soldiers on board felt it too, an amplification of their emotions, their hopes and fears magnified into something tangible. The void's mental assault faltered, its grasp slipping as the emotional energy pushed back against it. It's working. The emotional frequencies are stabilizing. The shield is holding. The void's ships regrouped, their movements still unnerving in their silence, but the humans held their ground. The amplified emotional shield wasn't just holding, it was pushing back. For the first time, the humans weren't just surviving, they were fighting back. The battle ended in a victory that no one expected. The Void's forces, though not destroyed, had been pushed back. Humanity, with its chaotic emotional nature, had proven that they could resist where others had fallen. The prototype held up better than I expected. We're going to need more of them if we're going to keep this up. We'll get you whatever you need. But this was just the beginning. We need to be ready for the next time. Next time, we won't just be ready to defend. We'll be ready to fight. As the human fleet regrouped, the rest of the Federation watched in stunned silence. They had always seen emotions as dangerous, unpredictable, something to be suppressed. But now, it was clear that those very emotions might be the key to defeating the Void. Humanity had turned the tide not with logic, but with love, rage, and determination. And the galaxy would never be the same. The victory over the Void had rippled through the Galactic Federation, shocking its members to their core. Humanity, primitive, emotional, unpredictable, had done what no other race had managed. They had fought back against the unstoppable force. But as the Federation grappled with the reality that emotions could be weaponized, there were those who struggled to reconcile the power of human emotion with the logic and order that had governed their lives for centuries. One of those was Elisra. As a Valorian, Elisra had been taught that emotions were relics of a chaotic past, weaknesses that had been purged from their society long ago. Her people had evolved beyond such base impulses, priding themselves on their intellectual purity and detachment from the unpredictable chaos of feelings. But now, as she stood on the observation deck of the human fleet, watching the stars streak by, Elisra found herself wrestling with the first stirrings of doubt. I'm trying to make sense of what I saw, of what happened. Emotions don't make sense. They're not meant to. My people have always believed that emotions are a hindrance, that they lead to chaos, to irrationality. But your people use them as a weapon, and it works. Your people believe a lot of things. Doesn't mean they're right. We evolved beyond emotions for a reason. Emotions lead to disorder, to violence. My people have thrived because we've left those impulses behind. And yet it's those same impulses that saved us, that saved you. Why? How can something so chaotic, so unpredictable give you strength? Because emotions aren't just chaos. They're purpose. They're what give us something to fight for. Love, rage, fear, they push us to protect the people we care about, to stand up when everything else tells us to lie down. You can't calculate that. You can't predict it. It's what makes us human. I don't understand it, but I want to. Over the next few days, Elisra observed the human crew more closely, watching how they interacted, how they fought, and how they felt. It was strange, unsettling even, to see the range of emotions they displayed. The way they laughed and joked with one another, even in the midst of war. The way they grieved for their fallen comrades, the depth of their sorrow tangible in the air. And yet, it was their ability to feel that seemed to give them strength. Elisra couldn't ignore the stark contrast between the humans and her own people. The Valorians were logical, efficient, but they lacked the fire she saw in the humans. They didn't care the way humans did, and it was that caring, however illogical, that seemed to drive the humans forward. They're not a weakness. They never were. You've shown us what emotions can do. You showed us that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't logic or reason. It's the heart. With Elisra's newfound understanding of the power of emotions, a new alliance began to form between humans and the Valorians. Elisra became a bridge between the two worlds, helping her people see the strength in emotions, while learning to harness that same power within herself. Humanity had always been the outliers, the unpredictable emotional anomaly in the galaxy. But now, their greatest strength was being weaponized, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. With the combined efforts of Dr. Liara Mori's research and Elisra's newfound understanding, humanity was ready to launch their first emotional offensive against the Void. This was no longer a war of survival. It was a war to reclaim the galaxy. This will be our first true offensive. The Void is entrenched in Sector 12, a key system that controls several major trade routes. If we take it back, we'll cut off their supply lines and give ourselves a foothold to push deeper into their territory. The Void won't expect this. We've fine-tuned the amplifiers to work at a larger scale. Entire fleets can now channel their emotional energy into a single unified shield. And we're not just defending this time. We've developed an offensive application, focused emotional blasts that will target the Void's psychic network directly. My people will support you. The Valorian fleet will provide the logic and precision your fleets need, while you provide the emotional power. All units prepare for engagement. Amplifiers online. This is what we fight for. Remember why you're here. Remember who you're fighting for. Your families, your homes, each other. We fight because we care, and that's something the Void will never understand. As the human and Valorian fleets pushed into Sector 12, the Void's forces emerged from the darkness. Their ships were like shadows, twisting and shifting in ways that defied physics. The psychic pressure began immediately, a suffocating force that sought to crush the minds of the soldiers before they could even engage. But the humans held firm. The emotional amplifiers flared, creating a protective barrier around the fleet. It wasn't just a physical shield, it was a shield of willpower. Every human aboard those ships was contributing, their emotions fueling the energy that pushed back against the Void's mental assault. They're trying to break through our defenses. Stay focused. We're getting close. This is it. All ships engage. The battle that followed was unlike any the galaxy had seen. The Void's ships, sleek and silent, moved with an eerie precision, their psychic energy pressing down on the human and Valorian fleets. But the humans fought back with everything they had. The emotional amplifiers blazed, fueled by the intensity of the soldiers' emotions. Every blast from the Void's ships was met with a surge of emotional energy, a shield of rage and love that deflected their attacks. The amplifiers pulsed in rhythm with the emotions of the fleet, each wave of energy pushing the Void's forces back. We need more power. The amplifiers aren't strong enough to break through the Nexus's defenses. We need to increase the emotional output. I'll do it. I'm going to manually amplify the emotional disruptor. Alexei, no. The energy required for that could kill you. The emotional feedback would overwhelm your mind. It doesn't matter. This is the only way. If I can focus my emotions, everything I've ever felt, we might have a chance. As he connected himself to the amplifier, a surge of emotional energy flowed through him. Fear, hope, love, rage, all of it intensified to a degree he had never experienced. His memories flooded his mind, the faces of the people he loved, the comrades he had lost, the battles he had fought. It was overwhelming, almost too much to bear, but Alexei held on. He focused on his love for humanity, his hope for the future, and the fierce determination that had carried him through every battle. The emotional energy flowed through the amplifiers, amplifying the disruptor's power. All ships fire. A beam of pure emotional energy shot forth from the disruptor, slicing through the Void's psychic defenses. The Nexus, overwhelmed by the chaotic force of human emotion, began to unravel. The enslaved minds that had been trapped within the Void's control were suddenly freed, their psychic chains shattered by the emotional wave. The Void's ships faltered, their connection to the Nexus severed. One by one they began to disintegrate, unable to function without the central psychic network that had bound them together. The Nexus collapsed, and the Void's presence began to fade. The oppressive darkness that had weighed on the galaxy for so long was lifting. The human and Valorian fleets watched in awe as the swirling mass of psychic energy disintegrated, taking the Void's control with it. All ships, this is Commander Novikova. The Void is down. We've won. The galaxy was free. The news spread like wildfire across human and alien worlds alike. The Void's influence had been broken. The enslaved species were free, their minds no longer under the control of the ancient force that had terrorized the galaxy for so long. You saved us all. We saved each other. You showed us what emotions can do. You showed us that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't logic or reason, it's the heart. Together, humanity and the Valorians stood on the brink of a new era, one where emotions, once seen as a weakness, were now understood to be the most powerful force in the galaxy. The Void was gone. The galaxy, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, was free from the suffocating darkness that had haunted its every corner. Species that had long been enslaved by the void's psychic control were now waking up, rediscovering the freedom of thought and will. But this new era wasn't just about survival. It was about rebuilding, and more importantly, it was about the lessons learned from the war. Lessons about the power of emotion and how the untamable force of the human heart had saved the galaxy. In the weeks following the collapse of the Void, the United Earth Coalition had become more than just a member of the Galactic Federation. Humanity was now recognized as the key force that had turned the tide of the war, a species that had embraced its emotions, its unpredictability, and turned it into the galaxy's greatest weapon. On Earth, celebrations filled the streets. The people, still reeling from the sacrifices made, were united in a way they had never been before. Statues were raised in honor of the fallen, and Alexei Novikova's name echoed through the halls of human history as the leader who had led the galaxy to victory. But the work was far from over. We stand here today not just as survivors, but as the architects of a new future. For too long, we believed that strength came from logic, from order. But the Void showed us that there is power in what we once thought was weakness. Humanity survived because of our emotions, our love, our anger, our hope, and it's those emotions that gave us the strength to defeat the Void. We Valorians once believed that emotions were something to be feared. We believed that they led to chaos. But now we understand. Emotions are not chaos. They are the force that drives us, that binds us together. Without them, we are hollow. The emotional amplifiers we developed weren't just weapons. They were proof that emotions can be harnessed, can be controlled. But that control doesn't come from suppressing emotions. It comes from embracing them, from understanding them. We need to rebuild the galaxy, but we can't go back to the way things were. The old ways, the cold logic, the detachment, those didn't save us. What saved us was the heart, and we need to build our future with that in mind. In the heart of the Galactic Federation, representatives from every species gathered for the first summit since the defeat of the Void. The tension in the air was thick, not because of fear, but because everything had changed. The old order, based on logic and reason, had been shattered by the power of emotion. And now, a new order had to be built. You've changed the galaxy, your people. They've shown us a different way of living. It wasn't just us. We couldn't have done it without you. Perhaps, but it was your emotions that turned the tide. I've spent my whole life trying to suppress my feelings, trying to live up to the ideal of logic. But now I see that emotions are not something to fear. They are something to embrace. You've come a long way. We all have. As Alexei and Elisra stood in silence watching the stars, there was a quiet sense of peace. The war was over, the Void was gone, and for the first time in years, there was hope. Back on Earth, Dr. Liara Mori continued her work in the newly established Institute for Emotional Science. The emotional amplifiers, once used solely as weapons, were now being repurposed for peaceful applications. Emotional energy was becoming a new field of study, with the potential to revolutionize everything from medicine to diplomacy. The tests came back. We've been able to stabilize the emotional energy field. We're ready for the next phase. This is just the beginning. Across the galaxy, planets once enslaved by the Void were beginning to rebuild.